Thanks, Ryan. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Messari Mainnet 2021, the future of oracles in a multi-chain world, a fireside chat. I'm your host, Ash Bennington from Real Vision. Our guest today, Sergey Nazarov, co-founder of Chainlink. Sergey, welcome.
Great to be here, Ash. Thanks for chatting with me and for including me in the conference. Thank you.
Sergey, we've got a lot to cover, so let's jump right in. What's the current state of play with oracles right now?
So I think we're really seeing two things. We're continuing to see the amount of data that oracles are putting on chain increasing rapidly to match the growing demand in DeFi and the growing demand for the variety of DeFi products, and also an increase in even more data sources providing greater and greater collective quality to the DeFi protocols or the markets in the DeFi protocols that secure greater and greater amounts of value, right? So we've seen a more than 10x increase in the value of DeFi over relatively short time span, and that's both in value locked in certain specific markets that need higher and higher quality data, and in the breadth of markets and the breadth of financial products made available by DeFi. So the first thing we're seeing is a continual increase in the amount of data. The second thing we're seeing is the use of Oracle networks for things other than data. So that means computation, right? So there's a bunch of computations that blockchains don't do that smart contracts need. And examples are random number generation. Other examples are keepers and automation. And other examples are even computing parts of the contract privately in an Oracle network. For example, our random number generator on a 30-day rolling average, I think, has passed 400 or 500,000 transactions per 30-day period, daily. In any case, I think for 30-day period now. And generally speaking, the amount of computations we see going into keepers and we see going into other computations that you can do in an Oracle network. So it's both data and computations. And I think what we're going to see next is more and more advanced hybrid smart contracts that combine the two. So they're going to combine data and various computations that previously were not possible in a trust minimized way. And that, the permutations from that are going to generate all kinds of new smart contracts or more advanced existing versions of contracts.
Yeah. Sergey, I can see in the Zoom camera that the Broadway Ballroom is packed right now watching this address. I'm curious to get back to the name of the panel. We're talking about a multi-chain world. So where are we right now? How do oracles fit into this cross-chain world that we're talking about?
So that's an example of a computation that isn't necessarily about data. Cross-chain communications is really more so about communications than token transfer. So the way we view it is that you need messages to move around both commands and data. And tokens are really data more than anything else. That's just very valuable and needs to be secured properly and needs to be handled very carefully. So the way Oracle networks fit into a cross-chain world is they are the decentralized computing environment. Oracle networks are the decentralized computing environment that will provide assurances that the cross-chain movement of a command, like a command from one contract on one chain to another contract on another chain, or the movement of a token from one chain to another chain, is done in a decentralized, trust minimized way. And that's just another type of computation that Oracle networks do. And just like our Oracle networks already secure over 50 billion with the data they provide, and they secure even more with the computations they provide, this is another class of computations where you need the same level of trust minimization and high reliability guarantees that you would expect from data or random number generation for high value games, or keepers computations to make sure protocols are operating correctly from a solvency point of view. All of these computations are different in what they do, but they all need the same level of trust minimization. And then likewise, as the computation is connected to greater amounts of value, you need to scale the security of that computation, which is really what Oracle networks, and specifically Chainlink Oracle networks, are supposed to be good at. As the value secured by them grows, they should efficiently scale to provide greater and greater security to that relative to that value, because that's both the efficient and more secure model. So the way Oracle networks fit in is the same way they fit in for all these other computations. They provide trust minimized, decentralized, off-chain compute, but on the topic of cross-chain commands and cross-chain token movements, which can all really be collapsed into messaging, into how do you message about commands across chains, and how do you message things about tokens, or the burning of tokens, the minting of tokens, the locking, unlocking, and so on.
So, Sergey, that's an excellent explanation of the 50,000-foot overview. Where are you right now at Chainlink in terms of implementation for cross-chain smart contracts?
So we're relatively far along. We have a number of chains that are already completely integrated using Chainlink data and using Chainlink keepers and using Chainlink randomness. And that basically creates a basis through which to send commands and messages across those different chains. So as we continue to integrate with more and more chains for the provision of these other services, each additional service, each additional decentralized service or capability that would be integrated into those chains becomes, to a certain degree, both easier and more secure, because the Chainlink nodes and the networks have experience with the nuances of that chain. Many chains have their own special nuances around speed and finality and any number of other factors. So what we're actually doing with cross-chain is we're developing CCIP, which is a global open source standard that we're developing in collaboration with a number of industry leading partners to solve their cross-chain problems. And it's focused on messaging. So it's focused on providing commands between chains and not just token movement.
I should probably jump in and say that CCIP is cross-chain interoperability protocol for those who are not down with the lingo yet.
That's right.
Yeah. So tell me, give us a sense on CCIP of where we are in terms of the maturation process of that relatively new technology. How widely distributed is support for CCIP right now?
So it's becoming wider and wider. Generally speaking, we have more and more kind of large DeFi and CeFi users. One example is Celsius, that wants to go cross-chain and provide access to different DeFi applications for their user base. Other examples are various DeFi protocols that need to get their systems working on other chains, and they also need to use other protocols on other chains. I think the real power of cross-chain and CCIP is the ability to build what we call cross-chain smart contracts. So I think what that means is that you will have, and you already have, all these different DeFi protocols on these different chains, and they all provide their own kind of unique value, whether that's through yield programs or whether that's through some other properties that they have that other protocols don't have. Generally speaking, what you tend to see is that as developers are able to compose more and more advanced applications, you continually get kind of more value and more useful applications for users. So what I expect to see is that the continual addition of data sources, the continual addition of randomness, and keepers and other off-chain computation, together with cross-chain, with these partners that I've mentioned, various DeFi and CeFi protocols, will enable them to build more advanced applications. But then those more advanced applications will become a template for how new developers coming into our industry build more and more advanced things. So I think there's these three pieces of this puzzle. There's the data to get all of this off the ground. Then there's off-chain trust minimized compute. And then cross-chain is the final piece, which, to your question, we are collaborating with the top derivatives protocols, lending protocols, on how do we solve their cross-chain communication and token movement issues. But very importantly, both of those issues, because what you actually want to be able to do is you want a protocol to be able to use another protocol through commands. So you want to be able to move tokens or move some kind of value between protocols, but you actually want to also be able to send commands about what should be done with that value, because that's what's really going to accelerate the ability to create cross-chain smart contracts.
Yeah. Sergey, I know it's hard to believe. Time has flown by. We got underway a few minutes late. We only have about 3 or 4 minutes left. One of the things that we were talking about off camera was the enterprise space, as well as the potential for CBDC, central bank digital currencies. How do you see the cross-chain oracles operating in a world with enterprise and CBDC?
So I think a lot of what I've seen with enterprise is they've slowly adopted open source standards, like Ethereum and others. So I'm seeing more and more of that. And I think that the enterprise is just on a different timeline from DeFi and public blockchain products, because enterprises will fundamentally have the same security issues to solve, the same data issues to solve, the same interoperability with other environment and chain issues to solve. So their fundamental technical issues and the architecture that they will arrive at for security reasons will be pretty much the same architecture as public blockchain teams who are, they're not doing this in theory, they're doing it in practice. They're providing real world production systems that are standing up against adversaries and various risks. And so there's actually a lot you learn from that. So I think what will happen with enterprises, and the spectrum is really, I think it's DeFi and crypto CeFi teams now, it's fintechs and insurtechs next, then it's early adopter enterprises, and then the mid-market of enterprises, and then eventually CBDCs. And I think all of them are gonna all migrate to blockchain-based systems. And the fundamental problem that they're gonna have is interoperability with their existing system, for which you need an abstraction layer that allows them to control various contracts on various chains, which is also what CCIP does through its messaging capability. So you can actually trigger events and monitor events in other chains using CCIP as an enterprise. And then for CBDCs, I do think CBDCs will eventually move to a blockchain-based infrastructure. And I think in the process of doing that, and even possibly before that, the digitization of value and money allows it to flow more easily into blockchain-based systems, which is fundamentally what I think our industry should want. I think our industry should want to secure the most value possible over time. So we should seek to secure financial transactions, trade transactions, ad networks, gaming systems, and so on. Yeah. And what I think will happen with enterprises is they will also face a cross-chain interoperability problem. And just like they are adopting the existing standards for their private networks, right? So they're basically taking the public chains, repackaging them as private, making them private through a limited membership. And then beyond that, I think the public blockchain teams are all thinking about privacy more and more. So that problem will be solved. And when that problem is solved, plus with user demand, that'll drive a lot of enterprise adoption. And then as they start to adopt multiple environments, they will have a big cross-chain interoperability problem. So our expectation is that the CCIP protocol will be used just like data, just like off-chain compute and Oracle networks, initially by DeFi and CeFi, and then eventually by fintech, well, actually already by fintechs and insurtechs, and then gradually more and more by enterprises, because those enterprises, they're not going to reinvent all this. They're just going to take the existing standards and apply them to their environment and their problems, which will be very, very similar to the problems already solved by CCIP and Oracle networks and decentralized data delivery.
Right. Well, Sergey, you paint a very compelling picture of this world, and it's a brave new world out there, truly. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everyone in the Broadway Ballroom for watching. Looks like we're going to need to wrap up now. Thanks again, everybody. Much appreciated. Thanks, Sergey.
Thank you.